Hi, my name is Coughlin Mellowes, and this is the Cart to Equality, Casey Martin versus the PGA. In 1998, golfer Casey Martin sued the PGA Tour to allow him to ride in a golf cart due to his physical disability. The resulting successful Supreme Court verdict forced the PGA Tour to protect his rights and expanded the reach of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Allow me to explain the history of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA was introduced into Congress in 1988 by Senator Tom Harkin and Representative Tony Coelho. They both had family members who dealt with disabilities such as hearing impairment and epilepsy. The ADA was eventually signed into law in 1990 by President George H.W. Bush. Some key provisions of the ADA are employment. Employers can't discriminate in the hiring process, and all areas of the job must be accessible to the worker. Public services. Provide accessible places for all government-funded buildings. An example of this would be a public school or a post office. Private spaces. Provide accessible access for all people. An example of this would be for privately owned buildings that are open to the public. An example of this would be a private school or a church. Communication. Provide accessible communication for all people. An example of this would be accommodations for the hearing impaired, Braille, and special phones. The ADA allowed people with disabilities to live the same but adaptable lifestyle compared to a regular person without a disability. At this point, Casey Martin will explain the ins and outs of his case to his team. Hey team, can we circle up? We have a new recruit in town, and I'm just now realizing he hasn't done his homework on me. He thinks I just had some sort of knee thing. So coach, what were sports like as a kid? When I was a kid, I dreamed of playing one of the 3 major sports. I enjoyed football, basketball, and baseball. I was especially good at basketball, which I played nonstop, until I realized I had a rare birth defect called Kippel-Turner-Weber syndrome. KWS is a rare birth defect that combines many leg malformations and turns into high leg overgrowth. This was going to be the end of sports that involved running because I just couldn't do it very well. My dad recommended a new sport that didn't involve running. It was the game of golf. I got into golf and I loved it. I played it nonstop. I became very good. I started dominating the courses of the Pacific Northwest. In golf, there are many rules. The 4 main rules around golf are walking 18 holes, scoring fairly, honesty, and integrity. Walking is a big part of golf, especially in competition golf. For example, golfer 1 walks a 7,300-yard golf course on an 87-degree July day. This golfer is going to be a lot more fatigued while swinging compared to golfer 2, who has been riding in a cart, riding in the wind all day. Golfer 2 hasn't taken on nearly the amount of fatigue and pain compared to golfer 1. That being said, many journalists say that either all competition golfers should ride in a cart or none should. But for me, with a disability, it's an uneven playing field. As I've said in many interviews before, if you put a gun to my head, I can walk, but it won't be pretty. I was still fine when I made it to college, but my college coach, Wally Goodman, made me take an advantage that was in the NCAA's rulebook that stated that any golfer with a disability shall be granted a cart. So my college coach made me take that advantage. I eventually got into the Nike Tour, which is one of the PGA Tour's many tours. I met a man named Bill Wiswall. He was a fairly good golfer, but he was nothing but a pro. But he was a pro at knowing the law. So Casey, there's a new law called the ADA, and in there it states that something that you need can be a reasonable accommodation. I know your legs are slowing quickly, so this shouldn't be a bad idea. Plus, Q School, which is your next tournament, will be the last time you'll be allowed to take a cart. No, Bill, no, I can't do it. I can't be the guy to stick out. I already stick out like a sore thumb with how I walk, and now I'm gonna have a cart? Bill knew my legs were slowing quickly, so he introduced and explained to me the ADA. He said that a cart would be a reasonable accommodation. I didn't think it would have been a good idea because I didn't want to stick out. I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be different. But I wanted to make it. I knew I had the skills to reach the top of the PGA. So me and Bill had to have a long conversation. We talked and talked for many hours on whether I should just give up golf entirely or take legal action. Quitting, in my mind, wasn't an option, so it had to be taken legal action. So team, if you don't know about the Constitution and the government all too well, I can explain it to you. So first we went to the district court, which is the first level of the national court system. And in there, they ruled in my favor, saying that riding a cart with my disability was enough fatigue. This throughout the PGA Tour's main argument, which was that I wasn't having the same amount of fatigue compared to a normal tour golfer. So the PGA didn't like the outcome, so they appealed to the Court of Appeals or the Circuit Court, where the Circuit Courts affirmed the PGA's, the district court's decision, but they said that a golf course is a public place where the ADA applies. This again threw out another one of the PGA Tour's main arguments. Any building built after the ADA was signed into law had to be ADA compliant, so to have ramps, elevators, braille for menus and bathrooms, and etc. So the PGA again decided to appeal. They appealed to the cream of the crop, the big dogs, the Supreme Court of the United States of America, the 9 judges with the most power in the country. And again, they ruled in my favor, but they said that a cart would not change the game. Wow, Coach, that is very interesting. What were some, opinions of your fellow golfers, journalists, and just ordinary people? I'm glad you asked. On September 1st, 2001, Golf Digest put out a poll asking if you agreed with the decision. 52% disagreed. This was a majority of golf traditionalists and purists who take golf very seriously. Many journalists had different opinions. Jeff Babino of the Sun Centennial was very much for the PGA. He said that the PGA Tour has the right to make their own rules. Linda Greenhouse of the New York Times said that the PGA Tour shouldn't even have ever thought about not letting me ride in a cart because that would have violated all my rights. My former college roommate, Tiger Woods, was very much for me, even though he isn't much of a traditionalist. Although he did say that he wouldn't ride in a cart after getting into the car accident in 2021. Jack Nicklaus, on the other hand, was very much against me. He even testified in the Supreme Court's case against me. He said that the game wouldn't be the same if Casey wins, and that Casey has a real life handicap and a golf handicap on the most prestigious golf tour in the world. But after the verdict, Nicklaus's son, in secret, came up to me saying that Jack was privately for me, but publicly against me. That was a very bizarre interaction, but I was very happy to hear it. So to finish out my career, I had one career win on the Korn Ferry Tour, and then I became the head coach of the University of Oregon's golf team. At the time, I didn't know about or wanted a legacy. At the time, I just did it for myself and just wanted to play golf. My case was a pivotal moment in combining sports with disabilities. It was more than golf. It put the Americans with Disabilities Act on the map for sports. The Supreme Court's decision illustrated how disability laws could be applied to sports without changing the game. Was this a hole-in-one for me, or a long par 5 ahead for the ADA? Thank you.